Thanks again for joining us on Virginia Free Fridays here at 11 a.m. Chris Saxman, your host, Executive Director, President of Virginia Free, the Foundation for Research and Economic Education. That's what FREE stands for. Founded in 1988 by business leaders concerned about the anti-business direction of the Commonwealth. So far, so good, notwithstanding some recent trends which we should be correcting in the future here. Let's jump into the Virginia primary results this week. Pretty strong showing in the first congressional district by Henrico. Commonwealth Attorney Shannon Taylor ran up over 50% in a seven-way and over 40. The key when I'm looking at these primary elections is the raw turnout vote. I think that's one of the key elements when you're forecasting out into the fall, which parties showed up in which districts and why or why not, and that might portend a bit more of a better analysis on what the likely outcome is going to be. But a really good showing for Shannon Taylor and the Democrats in the first congressional district. The Shannon Taylor will take on Rob Whitman. They had over 44,000 votes in a seven-way. Taylor had over 50%. That's real strong. In the second congressional district, Elaine Luria had a huge margin of victory, only 40,000 plus or minus votes in that one. Little under the first district, but also a lot less candidates. So take that with a grain of salt. And she'll go up against in a rematch against Jen Kiggins, who is a very strong candidate in the second congressional district and one who can, I think, better than most go against the environment. Now let's back up here before we do anything else. There are three critical elements to elections: in the environment, candidate quality, and money. So when I look at my forecasting and predicting of races, I don't get into the minutia of who's going to win by 2.7%. I really don't care. It's just the winners writ large. But Kiggins will be a very strong incumbent in that district, which is going to be one of the key ones for the Republicans to hold and the key ones for Democrats to win back control of the House of Representatives. The next two, the fifth and the seventh, as far as how the bobber goes up and down in Virginia, if the first district, if the second district falls to the Democrats, falls or flips, and because they're incumbents, they would fall. And the first district, Rob Whitman goes, it's a really bad night for Republicans. And then you're looking at the fifth versus the seventh, because if you're talking the first and the second districts, you're not talking about the seventh with Vindman against Doug Ollivant, the winner in the seventh district primary from Tuesday. And Ollivant only got 23,000 votes. That's paltry in my estimation for a competitive race. It just means the Republicans in that district were not very enthusiastic about turning out. However, in the fifth, John McGuire had a tremendous turnout for a basically poorly contested two-way race with Melanie Lucero, I think is her name, and he had almost 50,000 votes. So Shannon Taylor, that primary, 44,000, Luria, 40,000, but John McGuire, almost 50,000 votes. So turnout in rural Virginia, pretty strong. The opponent, Tom Perriello, former Congressman Tom Perriello, who, if you recall, beat Virgil Goode in 2008, served a term before he lost to Robert Hurt. In that district, 37,000 votes for Perriello, and that not Perriello, but the entire turnout. Remember though that UVA was not in, so a lot of the college kids would have been able to pump up some of those numbers in Charlottesville, not make up the 12,000 vote margin that McGuire had, but certainly there's a net loss on the total turnout there. Again, the seventh, Ollivant won, but a very low turnout, and then also just to note the turnout. And show you, because the ninth district, the Southwest Virginia, Morgan Griffith, the Fighting Ninth, the formerly Fighting Ninth, it's basically deep red country down there. Only 18,000 people showed up for voting the Democratic three-way, I think, primary in the ninth. So that shows you the lack of enthusiasm in the Democrats in the ninth, how that translates to the Republicans in the seventh. So that just shows you the weakness in the Republican turnout in the seventh congressional district. So recapping, in order of where the bobber on the water would be: congressional district number 2, Virginia Beach centric, Kiggins Luria. The next one is Shannon Taylor versus Rob Whitman. And then you go, in which direction is the environment going nationally for turnout? Is it the fifth or the seventh, the more likely to erode the margins? I think the sixth and the ninth are out of reach for Democrats. Although the governor, Abigail Spanberger, said that they can pick up 4 seats this year, which she had 8 out of the 11 congressional districts that she won in 2025 in a obviously a large margin of victory over Winston Sears, ran the worst campaign, gubernatorial campaign since the 60s, early 60s. And but we actually had an intervening election on the constitutional amendment, which shows there's some flex. There's some back and forth. I'm really surprised though the Republicans didn't make more of the anti-gerrymandering effort to draw out some of their base, especially in the Senate, which was won by Burt Mississauga over Kim Farrington and David Williams. I moderated a debate slash forum of the three back in Stanton. Gosh, when was that? A couple months ago. No one really stood out to me as far as having the momentum. I think Farrington and Williams could be better candidates and better served by going to a campaign candidate school to get better at it. Burt Mississauga has been around longer, Major General, great cred, Harvard grad, first in his class at West Point. I mean, he's got some stuff on the resume, obviously. But this is not that year in Virginia politics where a U.S. Senate race is going to flip Virginia. And I thought it's more incumbent upon Republicans to take some shots downfield, raise some issues. I threw out Social Security is going to be insolvent in your term of office. What do you got for us? Nothing. The only issue that really stood out to me where I had a decent answer was Burt Mississauga talking about unhandcuffing the suburban backlog or lack of inventory in housing when he said we should double the deduction or the exemption on housing on capital gains, go from 500,000 exemption to $1 million. That would unlock a lot of inventory. So that was a good idea, but never got any traction, never went anywhere. So anyway, that's the U.S. Senate race in Virginia. No one's suggesting that Mark Warner's going to lose there, but we have to think there might be a lack of enthusiasm statewide in some of these districts where there's not going to be a lot of turnout. In Jen McClellan's district, Bobby Scott's district, Don Byers, Subramanian's in the Loudoun base. So there's going to be a little bit of potential there, but not this year. The environment is so anti-DC right now, but I'm going to throw a little quiz out there for you of the favorable, unfavorable ratings between Donald Trump, Republicans, national Democrats. Who has the best? This is a kicker. Who has the best favorable, unfavorable rating ratio? Meaning if you're 40-20, 40-60, you're minus 20. Okay. Who has the best favorable, unfavorable between Donald Trump, the GOP, and Democrats? Donald Trump. He's only minus 15.4. The GOP is minus 16.6. The Democrats are minus 17.1. So while, the environment's really bad for Republicans and Donald Trump, from a branding perspective, the intensity, who knows how it's going to go. The Democrats actually have a worse favorable, unfavorable in the Real Clear Politics polling averages. So we'll see how that holds out throughout the rest of the year. And certainly with some of the nominations by the Democrats, it's looking a little bit more like 2010 as far as not meeting the moment and putting up candidates. Like the North Carolina Democrats have put an outstanding nominee in the former governor there, Roy Cooper, against Michael Whatley in the open seat to fill Tom Tillis' seat. But the Senate is going to be wild this year. Alaska, Michigan, and Maine could determine the outcome of the United States Senate, which is really stunning to me to think that those states would be that much in play. Obviously, the Maine election, replacing Plattner with Troy Jackson, and then he has his own problems. I mean, roll tide, man. Good Lord. And then Alaska, you have the Republicans with the Final Four program they have there. In Alaska, they got 2 Dan Sullivans on the ballot. One who's essentially a spoiler against the incumbent Senator Dan Sullivan himself. And you throw back the big news of the week, obviously, Michigan, Abdul Al-Sayed against Mike Rogers, probably a pickup for the Republicans there. And then you're into Iowa. Not so much. I think Hinson still pulls it out. Ohio's got a real good chance to Sherrod Brown to win back a Senate seat, not his original seat, a different seat. And then, of course, a hot one in Ken Paxton versus James Tallarico in Texas. A lot of toss-ups there, quite frankly. At this stage of the game is going to come down to, again, those 3 elements, environment, money, and candidate quality. Obviously, in Texas, the candidate quality there for the Republicans is a bit lacking compared to John Cornyn, and that was the crux of their primary battle back in the spring. Transitioning over to, let's just jump right into data centers. Right way, wrong way. Regardless of where you are in data centers, Jimmy Crickets, this is one of the most out of control issues I've seen in decades. The amount of intensity behind this issue is extraordinary. I did an interview with Delegate David Reed from Loudoun County, who has more data centers in his legislative district than any district in the world. He said, I'm going to take him at his word. But he also pointed out there's a lot of problems with the Loudoun, frankly, we consider overdevelopment. Now that they're running $1.3 billion in tax revenue to the locality of Loudoun County. But he said in 2000, there was a zoning ruling that allowed by right to put data centers basically anywhere in the county. And he's saying, long ago, Loudoun County could have had some zoning restrictions on these data centers. But he also said, Botetourt County and Mecklenburg County are doing it the right way. Rural localities with industrial parks zoned the right way versus the by right problem in Loudoun County. So you have a chance, go back and listen to that interview with Delegate David Reed, who I think is doing a great job of listening to people and trying to solve the problems as he is the data center delegate in the world, quite frankly. That brings into the overlay of the Dominion Next Era merger/acquisition. I think it's more acquisition than merger, given the size of the operations here. But everyone's weighing in on it. Conflicting messages, conflicting narratives. Some members of the legislature are saying, "Oh, we need to take more time." The SEC, the experts need to take more time, and then you have other legislators saying, "Nope, I oppose it." Okay, you oppose it, but your colleagues are also saying we need to take more time to understand what's actually going on into it before we make a decision. There's a little bit of a conflict there in that dynamic, and then we'll just jump into what's left of the 2029 races. A lot of candidates raising, obviously, State Senator Glenn Sturtevant, who puts out an anti-data center message on X. That is a tell that he wants to run statewide. But also there's some Google data center development in Chesterfield, which was probably drawing out his constituents. And he was in a very closely considered election 3 years ago. Sorry for the dogs. Hopefully here we go. Calm down about that. Jason Miara is obviously going to be one in consideration for the Republicans. Maybe even Glenn Youngkin again. If he doesn't run for president, he's looking more and more like he's going to be going for president. He was in Iowa helping Ashley Hinson. He came out and is now on school choice, which I'm sure shocks a lot of school choice people from Virginia. He's putting together it looks like a C4 operation, empowering America's parents, I think it's called, to opt into the program that President Trump created on educational tax credits. And then Jay Jones and Lieutenant Governor Hashmi. So, but I think the under-discussed candidate for 2029 is Speaker of the House Don Scott. It's one of the most poorly kept rumors in Virginia. So that's the prelude to our conversation. I'm going to turn off the record and get to y'all, and